I buy it because that's what inspires me to play, not because it's expensive or whatever. I just love the way that it feels, and there's something that this guitar does, and you'd be really surprised that with a great setup, that a Squier Classic Vibe Telly is actually not that far off of a custom shop if you like it great. But no one's gone and bought an R9 and go, I could have bought 50 Harley Benz instead. That's actually, I'll tell you, the best value on the entire guitar market, in my opinion, is.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Killer Guitar Rigs podcast. My name is Adam. Next to me on my right, we have Brian, the founder and editor of Killer Guitar Rigs magazine. And to my left, we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Alex Budnick from A Flash Flood of Gear. Tell the people, what are you all about?
Hello. Well, thank you guys for having me. My name's Alex. I run a online-based music gear shop called A Flash Flood of Gear. We mainly deal in like used and vintage guitars, pedals, synths, amps, all that kind of good stuff. And we get to travel all over the country and I guess kind of all over the world now looking for cool and hard to find music gear. And then we bring it in, get it refurbished, and get it listed on our website. And we also do a YouTube channel kind of documenting that process.
Very cool. And you mentioned traveling across the world. Now, there is a topic that I wanted to talk about that has to do with that, and that is the guitar show circuit. Because we talk to a lot of guitarists, and a lot of them, we say, we're going to the Orlando Guitar Show in a couple weeks, and they don't know what that is or what it even means to go to a guitar show. So for someone who has no clue what that is, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, a lot of people seem to not know about them, and we've done videos documenting a bunch of these shows, and it's always surprising how many comments are like, I live in Dallas. I didn't even know they were doing this, or, whatever the area is. So it's definitely something I'd like to get more popular. But basically these shows are they're trade shows where all, like a lot of dealers from either that area or, some travel from far and wide, all meet up and bring some of your stuff and bring stuff to buy, or bring stuff to trade, sell, usually buy from the public. And it's literally just like, if you ever like SneakCon, like the sneaker conventions, it's not that different than that, from the videos that I've seen, or like any like the retro game expos. It's like that. Some of the expos even have like panelists and stuff, and they'll have little presentations. Some shows it's just kind of buying and selling, but they're usually like 2 or 3 day shows. Like on Friday, all the dealers will come in, bring all their gear, and you'll get everything set up and then shop around to the other dealers and maybe trade some stuff around, maybe buy some stuff you need for your shop. And then Saturday and Sunday, if it's a Saturday and Sunday show, the public will come in and check out your stuff. And it's a great chance to promote your business, but as well as like promoting the shop and meeting people and networking, which is all obviously great. People are also a lot of times bringing in their gear that they want to sell or trade. So we'll get like some pretty cool gear just like walking in during the show. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, it's just kind of a meetup of, bring your music gear and swap stuff around, play something you never played before, and it's a lot of fun. And for us, it's just mainly a great way to get inventory. We don't like sell a ton of stuff at these shows. I mean, like we do like the full booth, and we'll bring maybe 30, 40, 50 guitars and display them. We don't send it to we don't tend to like sell a ton outright, but we usually trade out a ton, buy a bunch from both the public and dealers, and by the end of the show, we've usually acquired a good amount of guitars, which is what keeps us going.
So if somebody was coming from the general public to their first guitar show, what are some things that they would want to know going in? Like, what's the etiquette? What kind of are the rules of engagement? What are you actually expected to do once you're there?
It's funny because I want to say make yourself at home, but like also be really respectful of people. And like, if you see a guitar you want to play, unless it's something like absolutely insane, like a $500,000 Les Paul Burst, most dealers will be very eager to say like, yeah, please play it. That's what it's here for. So just ask if you want to play something, and you'll probably be able to play literally anything in the room, whether it's a guitar, amp, or a pedal or whatever. Even if you're not like super serious about buying it, most people there, us included, it's like if somebody comes by and they try guitar and it's maybe the first time they've played a Flying V or something like that, even if they're not buying it, it's still a cool experience to say, oh, that came from our shop. So yeah, I would just say, feel comfortable trying different stuff, but always make sure to like ask before you just start grabbing stuff on people's tables.
Can you tell us some of the cool stuff that's like walked in the door and been brought up to your booth at different shows?
Man, we've had so many, so it's tough to hone it down to just a few, but like, I don't know why this is the one I'm thinking of now, but I remember we did Asheville last year, and Saturday morning, it was like 10:05. The doors opened at 10. This guy had just a gig bag he was walking around with, and I was like, hey, what'd you bring with you? And I'm thinking, if it's in the most plain, unassuming black gig bag. And he's like, oh, it's just this old Mustang bass. And it was a 71 Mustang bass that was like perfect. It was all original. The finish was pretty aged, but like in a cool way. And so I was like, you just kind of never know what people are going to have tucked away in the case. And so that was the first buy from the public, and that was cool. So I remember that. That was a good one. But every show, there's always something cool that comes in that you weren't expecting. And it's just kind of become a bit of like, hey, is that something you're selling? Like just trying to like check out anything anyone's bringing in. And it's not to be like a vulture or whatever, but it's just like, you just never know. And like most people don't know who we are, obviously, at these shows. So they might not know to ask, even though we have like signs that say like, hey, like we want to buy your stuff. But just always trying to just check out whatever's walking in the door. And obviously most of it, we might not buy, whether it's just something we don't want or the prices make sense as like a shop or whatever. But
now, do you find a lot of people have skewed expectations of what they're going to get when they bring in an instrument? Like I guess how realistic some people's ideas of what they're bringing? Because when you're doing a deal where you're the one bringing something to the table to a business, I think a lot of people want like retail. Yeah. It's like the GameStop meme.
Oh, totally.
Like, oh, they're only offering me $7 for like 850 games.
Right.
But I found guitar dealers are generally really fair.
Yeah.
Within reason to having a margin.
Yeah.
Is there like a math that like someone at home could do realistically of like, all right, I have a guitar that's worth 500. What can I expect to get?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what it is. And I would say, most dealers, like especially the ones we're friends with, have always been like cool. And I see how they handle the public. And most, even if they're not making the best offer, I think most try to be reasonable. There's definitely some out there that are, I wouldn't go as far as say like predatory, but I definitely like offering next
like
to nothing. And well, they also like, it always kills me when I see a dealer like have, someone will bring a guitar that is obviously not in the best shape. And rather than just saying like, oh yeah, this is cool for what it is, they want to be like, oh, but this sucks and this has all these problems. And it's like, and then the low offer comes in where we try to do the opposite and say, listen, like, yes, it's in this condition. We either still want it or don't. And given that, let's see if we can work something out. But yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question. But yeah, people's expectations are all over the place. Sometimes they actually are really realistic. Like and I really try to like be straight up with people. If somebody comes up to our booth with a really realistic asking price on a guitar, like I don't haggle down from there. If they come in with one that's close to what we can do, I might say, hey, we can't get all the way there, but here's what we can do. Or maybe I can't give you that cash, but I could give you a guitar that costs that much from us and like a trade because you can usually get more there. But as far as an equation to like what you should expect, I mean, checking out like what your item is actually sold for on Reverb is really helpful. And then depending how easy it is to sell, depending what brand it's from, the percentage you'll get paid for that from a dealer will vary widely. And then also if you want cash or do you want to trade or like, a little bit of both, all those scenarios are cool. If you just want cash, that's obviously going to be like the lowest someone's going to offer you. But if it's something good, if it's Fender, Gibson, whatever, like usually you'll get like 60 to 70%, give or take, obviously, of like what that would probably sell for. So if it's something that like you're seeing them listed for 11 or 1200 on Reverb, the solds are all saying about 1,000, you're probably going to get a cash offer of 600 to 700. That's probably, but if it's a trade, that maybe they'll give you an $800 or $900 guitar. I know for us, we try to kind of do as much as we can. And especially if like they're looking at something in our booth that maybe we've had for like a little longer than we intended. Right. And the numbers are a little closer. I'm usually down to get closer to a easy swap. But yeah, I mean, just you always have to have some margin, but then also keep in mind, like I'm talking about 60 or 70% for a Fender or like a Gibson guitar. If you're bringing in something a little more obscure that maybe it's rare, but
it might sit for 8 months.
Yeah, 100%. And so some of those, it's like, you never know. I mean, usually like 50%, but it can definitely, vary a bit depending what it is. I could talk about that for like hours, as I'm always like, it's just tough because you always want to give someone like the best offer you can, but then you also got to know when to say like, hey, the number I'm willing to pay for this, you don't need to sell it at, just keep it or just sell it on your own or like,
yeah.
Because sometimes stuff is really obscure and like, I know they paid a lot of money and there might be someone out there that's willing to pay it, but I don't know that we have them in our clientele, or I don't know if they're going to come across our Reverb listing or whatever. So sometimes I'm like, listen, I could make you an offer, but if you're not like needing to sell this right now, I would just I would be patient and sell it on your own. But yeah, a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm done with this thing. I don't want to have it anymore.
Yeah.
And we might end up with it. But yeah, the more, I mean, this is obvious, but like the more desirable, or not just desirable, the more easy is something to sell, the closer to the current market you'll get paid. And also market's always like changing. So sometimes you might buy something 1 year and then go to sell in 2 years, and you might be pleasantly surprised that you might get offered as much as you paid for it. Like I just bought it was 3 of these like American vintage tellies, and we paid like what would have been retail for them back in 5-10 years ago,
Right.
like brand new retail. We bought them used, so like stuff appreciates. So with that on your side, and an American vintage Telecaster in a cool color is, for me, is like one of the top tier things you'd be finding that we would sell quickly. So I would pay as much as that would be like the closest to market value that I'd pay would be for stuff like that, or clean Les Paul standards or whatever. So
see,
yeah.
I find, especially stuff like shows, what is a good way to think about it is I'll bring a bunch of stuff that I necessarily don't really care to have anymore.
Yeah.
And try to consolidate that down. Like if I trade you like these 4 things, can I get like one really nice guitar?
That's the best.
I think that's great.
That to me, and I always talk about this with the team, are like my favorite deals, because we're getting, like, we had this example I'll mention, like in Sarasota, we had this beautiful ice blue metallic Jazzmaster. It was a Japan exclusive, and it was great. I mean, it's probably like a $2,000 guitar, somewhere around there, and somebody really wanted it, and they brought us 4 guitars that were worth obviously enough more to be like worth taking it on. But we did the math and we did the swap where they moved in 4 like things that none of them were even worth half of what the Jazzmaster was. But by the time you combined it all, it was worth enough more to be worth the time. And they walked away with one really, really awesome guitar. And we had 4 guitars that we were able to take the time and sell for the right price. And obviously ended up getting a good bit more than we would have gotten out of just the Jaguar or the Jazzmaster. So that's the best, is when somebody can trade up and save some space in their house or studio or whatever. That's good. And who doesn't like having like nicer gear? So we're always open to stuff like that. 2, decent guitars for 1 that's really, really great. And then it saves you the work of selling 2 as well. That lets us do our job of selling those 2 guitars. So yeah.
Are there any things that you think people are surprised by the first time that they go to a guitar show? Like for me, I was surprised that like 80% of what I would see at a guitar show, other than acoustics, is Les Pauls. It's just like walls and walls and walls of Les Pauls everywhere.
That's interesting. I've never been surprised by that, because at shows people are just looking for Les Pauls. So like right now the guys are driving up to Philly at the moment. I'll be flying out there shortly for that show. But I sent like a bunch of our Les Pauls, because it's just like, and the thing is, people aren't even coming to buy them. It's like we just were talking about, like people are like, you know what, let me just bring like all my stuff. Let's bring a bunch of pedals. Let's bring the American Strat, whatever. Let's put it all together and let's see if we can do Les Paul standard. Is like one of the most common things we see happen. So I always just try to bring as many Les Pauls as I can. I think there's some sticker shock. I feel like people are always surprised. And sometimes they're surprised of like, wow, that's way more than I've seen that go for. Because some booths definitely like list stuff for a lot, like more than it's going for online, which, it's your stuff, do whatever you want with it. But for us, like I only bring stuff that I think that we can price like, fairly and even sometimes aggressively to the current market. But I think they don't just get sticker shock because it's too expensive, because they don't know what a 61 Strat goes for or whatever. So you can see like, oh wow, why is this guitar $30,000? And I'm not saying that would be a deal, but it's like, well, it is what it is. Like that's about what they go for. They're maybe not selling overnight, but to the right buyer, I mean, a 61 Strat could be $30,000 without breaking a sweat. So.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, that's the thing too with a lot of this stuff is it's rare, and they only made a handful, and a lot of people gigged the heck out of them, and then changed out a bunch of parts and whatever else it is. So it's like to have an example of something that has all original everything that's 50, 60 years old, especially stuff that wasn't collectible or rare at the time.
Oh yeah,
a Strat back in the day, they didn't baby them.
Totally.
So like the person who did baby it was kind of the exception. So when you have a workhorse thing that got preserved like that, it kind of holds its value, I think, more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes to all that. I mean, it's they're not making any more, and there's not that many that are actually in like all original condition. And
Joe Bonamassa bought probably
Right.
all the other ones.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, not a lot of the market, not a lot of the supply is actually on the market.
Well,
And-
people will just call. People will get a rare guitar and call like the guy they know
Yeah.
that will buy it.
Oh yeah.
So
Doesn't
not
even
just
see the
Joe, but
internet.
like anybody, you know,
Yeah.
oh, I have the guitar player for live. He loves
Sure.
buying, 60s Les Pauls.
Who
I got a
doesn't?
rare one. Let me call him.
Yeah. No, and it's funny too, because like we're talking about this with like golden era vintage, but we're even seeing that with like 80s Fujigen made Greco stuff,
Mhm.
like which is way, 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 way cheaper than we're talking about with a 60s Strat or whatever. But so many, because when those were new, they weren't like super collectible. So many of them have had changed parts by now. So when you do find the example that's all the way it's supposed to be, it's like those are starting to go for maybe more than you would think, just because like, oh, there's not that many that are this clean. Whereas maybe a player example, there's plenty of them out there. So
Well, speaking of Fujigen and Japan in general, would you want to talk a little bit about y'all's travels
yeah,
to Japan and seeing guitars and seeing how their market works and maybe some differences from here?
yeah. So I went over for the first time in March of 2020 and to play some shows. And you can imagine exactly how that went. We did get to play all of our shows, but we had to literally the day after our last show, which we were planning on staying for another week, we had to
Oh,
we had
did something
We had to
happen?
get out of there. Yeah, right. But I just went over there and we went into Akibi Music in Akihabara, and I immediately was just like blown away by how much stuff that they carry, both new and like used and vintage stuff that we just don't see here. So many cool Fender Japan guitars that are made in Japan, like just for their domestic market, and they don't really export them. And I was like, man, we got to figure out a way to get some of these over to the States. Like they have stuff that's made, like I said, made in Japan for the Japanese market that goes for just as much as the stuff that we make here in the US for the American as well as global market. So I was just like blown away by how many cool custom colors like Fenders they had. Brands like Fujigen, FGN, and ESP making guitars under the Edwards brand, and like there's all this stuff that we just like don't see, and it's how do I put this? It's not like a second tier product. Like I think like how we have like Mexico Fender is obviously a notch down from the American stuff. Like there, the Japan stuff is the premium, so that's the one that has all the options. That's the one with the cool color, and they just don't make enough to supply to the rest of the world. And frankly, I don't think they want to supply to the rest of the world. Like Fender Japan almost operates as its own company. So yeah, and they're very particular too, not just with new guitars, but with vintage. Like vintage stuff can go for crazy money there, but it has to be that all original example. Like we have way more of a player's grade market here in the States, whereas over there, it's gotta be right. It's gotta be perfect. And they will pay for perfect, which is really, really cool. Also, just based on like living situation, I don't meet a lot of people that own 30 guitars, which is pretty common here. I know we all here own a number.
Got a couple guitars.
I don't want to talk about that.
But
you guys go ahead.
So because of that, one thing I think is really cool is just that like how much custom shop stuff there is, both from Fender, Gibson, Martin,
ESP.
that like ESP as well. And
Yeah.
it's like you save up and you get your one like just amazing piece. And not only that, like you take it out and play it. Like we go to the like, smaller live houses, or there may be a 200 cap room, and it's super common that like more artists than not are playing like a custom shop Les Paul or something at that echelon. Whereas if we go down the street to like Will's Pub, a lot more Epiphones and like whatever stuff.
Shout out Will's Pub.
Yeah, shout out to
Shout
Will's
out
Pub.
Epiphone.
Love Will's Pub. But
Does that mean so if in Japan they're really focused on used instruments that are in perfect condition, does that mean for you as a dealer there's a lot of deals to be had in terms of getting like not perfect pieces to bring back to the US where people are less precious about that kind of thing?
yeah, I mean, it definitely can work out that way. As far as the more common color stuff goes, yeah, there's definitely like deals to be had. There's also not the same like level of like luthiership there. So it's not uncommon to find a deal on something that's maybe less perfect, but you're taking more of a gamble with it because it's usually like they're either like this has been completely either restored or set up and it's good to go and it is the one, or they'll call it like junk condition and just say this is what it is. And it's tough because like as a shop, it's like we're not going to buy a guitar that's listed in junk condition unless I've got my hands on it and said like this is clearly not. So it's tough. So there's definitely deals to be had in that realm, but it's weird to divide like the bad condition guitars in Japan are probably worse than here, which I don't know why that is. I mean, the humidity definitely is not doing them any favors, but yeah, the answer is like yes with an asterisk. It's that like when you find a great deal there's probably more asterisks just because there's like stuff's either really been gone through or hasn't been looked at. Which I will say we found some gems where something's maybe not been marked as junk, but they just say we haven't even set this up. And we go okay, and you go take it apart, and you're like, oh, everything's perfect here, everything's the way it's supposed to be. It just was a little dusty. So
nice.
Do you have any thoughts on? And maybe it's just me, but I feel like over the last 5
It's going to be just him for sure. Go on.
Well, over the last 5 years or so, I feel like I went from not knowing what like Greco and Orville and a lot of these are to now it's like super sought after. What do you think? I mean, that's not just me, right? Like,
no, that's definitely been a thing. I mean, I'm even somewhat in that boat. Like, I mean, for the last 5 years, of course, I've been well in that. But I mean, 10 years ago, I like vaguely knew about Greco and whatnot. But yeah, it's gotten way more popular. I think people like it's always been a sentiment online that like the Japanese made guitars are some of the best ever made, and so they've always been quite popular. But yeah, I think as like a lot of the American stuff just started getting more and more unattainable for certain people, it started being like, oh, it's $4,000 for a pretty basic Gibson Les Paul Custom now, but for like $1,500, which is still a lot of money. It's not like it's cheap. You can get a fantastic Greco or even get into Orville territory, which for those who don't know, Orville is guitars licensed by Gibson, almost like Epiphone, but made in Japan. So for a while, they're doing this Orville line where it was Epiphone, and then a step up from that was Orville, and then a step up from that was Gibson. But the Japanese craftsmanship was so good that some of the Orvilles, some people like just as much as Gibsons, which is cool. Even like the Orville by Gibson specifically, to get into the weeds a little bit, are a lot of times like those Orville by Gibson, it says Orville by Gibson on the headstock. They'll have nitro lacquer finish, and they will have Gibson USA parts and hardware and stuff. So, and electronics, most importantly. So, yeah, I think more information has just gotten out there, so more people want them, and so there's been a demand for shops like us to really put resources into getting those guitars in, as they're still not common, but we'll do the legwork to find them, and not just find them, but go there. I mean, we've been to Japan 4 times, done a shop for guitars, and find the great examples, because it's really tough to tell, like just from pictures online. You don't know what you're buying. Bit of a risk to buy a guitar from the other side of the world, pay all the shipping and import and everything, and not know what you're getting, whereas we can go in person and go buy 100 guitars at once and do all the vetting for you. So yeah, it's there's such a market for that now that it's worth the legwork. We just have to do a lot of it to make it worth the while. Yeah,
I mean, I went from not knowing what Greco is to having like 2 pretty quick. I mean, that's a Greco. My Les Paul is Junior. Is Greco.
That was from us. That was
that thing's wild.
I sent you a picture. I was like, this is not the one you want.
And I was like, bring it home anyway. Yeah. Let me play it. Let me play it. It's a player's grade.
For reference, it's like a TV special. But somebody like colored the carve black. Like I guess they carved the front end a little bit and colored it black.
They contoured it.
They added a humbucker pickup, which is a cool mod, but just put some foam around it to make it fit like the.
I'll put a picture.
Yeah, show it on screen.
It's interesting.
It's sick, but it was funny. I was looking at it. I sent it to Adam because I was like, this doesn't necessarily meet our standards of like what we're looking for. When I say we want to do the legwork to find the right stuff, like we certainly find a lot of stuff on the way that might not be the perfect guitar.
And I was like, bring it back.
Yeah, but it might be the guitar for somebody. So
that somebody's me.
Yeah, that's actually, I'll tell you, the best value on the entire guitar market, in my opinion, is a player's grade like Japanese made guitar that like it's not going to be collectible like that. But I mean, that's just as good as like functionality wise. That's probably just as good as the collector one. Because in that case, it's like, yeah, it's got some quirks, but none of them are fretwork related or neck related or like anything structural. It's all there. It just has some swap parts and some choices made.
But, you can always swap them back,
Right, 100%.
You're never too far gone to come back home, I think Bon Jovi said that.
I don't know if he's right about that, but I've seen some stuff that's a little too far from home.
I've definitely been too far gone to go home a couple of times.
Well, when we talk about vetting these guitars and buying these guitars, there are going to be a lot of people who obviously are going to go out and try and find their own deals on vintage. What are some red flags that you see in a vintage guitar that you would say, I'm not buying this one? And what are some, I guess, green flags? Like, what are the things that you check? What do you look for? So if somebody's out shopping, they know I'm not going to get stuck with a lemon. I'm going to get, something that's good. But maybe they don't know. What would you tell them?
My biggest thing, and there's so many things to talk about here. My if I was to name one thing, is like, don't buy something that the logo has been redone on, even if it's supposed to be correct otherwise. If the Fender or Gibson or Martin or whatever logo has been redone. I'm not saying like, if you know what you're looking at and you are aware of the situation, it's a vintage guitar that's had to be rebadged, that's its own thing. But if you're new into this and like you just want to stay safe with your, what you're spending your money on, I would really avoid anything that's been rebadged to any capacity. Nothing wrong with changed parts, and you can tell a lot by how upfront a dealer is about, or just an individual seller, about like what's been replaced and whatever. And if they're giving you all the info, there's nothing wrong with, hey, this one has Seymour Duncan pickups. If you like that, then cool. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, Fender parts casters, I again would kind of stay away from unless you know exactly what you're looking at. Like I know I have one right now that actually I found on a previous trip to Philadelphia, but it's an American Special body in Fiesta Red, HSS pickups, including like the bridge is a Seymour Duncan Pearly Gates, if I remember correctly, and then the neck is like from a Robert Cray, like Mexican made signature strap. All cool parts. I knew what I was looking at. I knew what each part was from, and I knew what each part would be worth on its own, and then what the whole thing might be worth. If you know what you're doing, that's fine. But like if you have a question, just pass on it, I guess, is my thing. Like if you have to wonder, because the amount of times that I've seen something where like it's all parts neck, which are technically licensed by Fender, or Warmoth licensed by Fender, people love to skirt the line and put the Fender logo on it and be like, no, well, it's a licensed Fender neck. And it's like, well, if that logo wasn't put on by Fender, then, so I would just avoid that. If you have any question about authenticity, just don't.
What about playability wise? Like if I handed you two guitars from the same year, same model, what would you be looking for when you sat down to play them?
This is not like a hard pass, but it's like I definitely like to see if the frets are not just in nice shape, because frets can be a little worn and still be fine. It's used in vintage guitars. The frets are not going to be perfect. But it's making sure that there's still some fret left and that everything plays right. It's not like fretting out in any particular areas, making sure that the neck is straight. But even if it's a little off, it's more about just making sure that truss rod can be adjusted in both directions. We don't sell anything that the truss rod can't move both ways unless it's like very explicitly noted, which even if that is extremely rare that we'd even sell anything like that. And if we do, it's going to be on our second reverb shop of like, hey, this is a problem.
Like the warehouse deals.
Yeah, we do have a warehouse deals for the stuff that doesn't make the quality check. And we obviously describe accordingly what the reasons are why it didn't. And if the truss rod doesn't turn both ways with room, then that's a no-go for us. You need to be able to adjust that over time. But making sure there's no overspray. Well, I guess that's not really playability as much. But.
Well, okay, so if someone didn't know what overspray is.
That's when like somebody's touched up the finish. And if you like look at a guitar with the black light, you can usually see where work has been done, and it'll glow in areas where it's been worked on. So that's getting a little in the weeds. But
that somebody was me. By the way, I wasn't sure what you meant. So.
Oh, okay.
I figured there was definitely other people at home who were going to go, I don't know what that is.
Sorry, everyone.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
That's why the experts are
here. Buy what you're comfortable with and buy from reputable dealers if there's any question in the world. Once you get more comfortable, it's fine if you go find like a great deal privately. But if you're spending premium dollar with somebody who may or may not know what they have, may or may not care to tell you what they have, it's that can be a little risky. I do think people are innately good. I do think most people are not trying to trick you on anything. Most people are being upfront. And even we'll buy stuff in. Like I just got a haul in a few days ago for 3 really great guitars, and they said all 3 are all original, all the things, and turned out on one of them the bridge had been replaced. But I don't think they meant to deceive us. I think they've had it since the 90s, and they just never noticed. As it was, the bridge was, we could date the bridge to being older than the time period when they said they bought it. So I do think people are trying to be honest. I do think most people are upfront, but just do your own due diligence, and going to a dealer that has a good reputation is always good. And 2, that way, like if something does come up and you reach out and be like, hey, this is a problem, they'll usually take care of you too. I mean, if we ever have stuff come up, let us know. We get it fixed.
Yeah, I think one thing too, if we talk a little bit about pricing for vintage gear, one thing that I've noticed, a lot of people will come to me, hey, I'm about to buy this thing, and it's something they've never heard of. And so they see a listing like, oh, this is from the 50s, and it says it's rare and vintage, and these don't come up a lot, and it's only $800.
Yeah.
Let me go get it. And then you're like, hold on, let me see the listing.
Right.
And then you go look at like the sold listings on eBay, and it's something that goes for $200 all the time.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But because it's super old and it's not something you've ever even heard of, you might not know. To me, that's like, a lot of people want to impulse buy something because they think it's rare.
Yeah.
And it's not. Is there anything else like that where it's like, maybe buying mistakes that you see people making? Or
I would say anything in that category where it's kind of obscure, but it's old and vintage, that you're buying online, you don't have a chance to check it out in person. Have realistic expectations and go in knowing like, if you want to spend $800, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, just keep in mind, it doesn't mean you're going to get it back.
Yeah.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder and stuff like that. And if you like it, cool. Like, this might sound crazy, but it's like under $1,000. If you can afford it, don't do something stupid that you can't afford. But if that's a non-life-changing amount of money, if you think it's cool and you're going to enjoy it and play it and you understand it might not be perfect, go for it. Have fun. Nothing wrong with that. It doesn't guitars are not always investments. Like we talk about a lot of times, like if you buy like I'm always saying Gibson and Fender in this, but a older Gibson or Fender in nice shape with all the right parts and everything, like it should hold its value and appreciate over time. Your random vintage no-name guitar that might be like old Sears catalog guitar might be sick, but it might not hold its value the same way. So if you're willing to lose that money, then there's nothing wrong with spending your money on something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be an investment. You don't have to move forward in everything you do. Just don't buy it with the expectation of this is going to be perfect, and in 3 years I'm going to sell it for a profit, because you might not.
Yeah, it's wild when you see people who like faced with two guitars, one they really want and then one that they feel like they can get their money back from.
Yeah.
Like as people who actually play the guitars, it's like buy the one you want to play.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Which I have to remind myself, because sometimes like friends will show me stuff and it's like I'm between these two, and one's a $2,000 Les Paul and one's a $2,000 more unknown thing.
Like a custom build or something.
Luthier build or whatever.
Say it's like a Fano.
Yeah. Well, Fano has a good reputation. Like Fano's, I think Fano has reached the echelon of holding its value pretty well. But I would go, yeah.
Well, we don't have to name any names then.
I'm not going to name any names, and not in a shade way, just the name that I wouldn't be naming, if that makes any sense. The name that maybe wouldn't come up in a podcast because it's too obscure. Yeah, if you like it, great. But I have a hard time, because a lot of times I tell people like, no, just get the Gibson one. That's gonna, hold its value better. You know what you're buying. That's a more like recognizable thing. But that's not always the right answer. If you find something you like and you can afford it, I guess actually that's the real answer. You don't need anyone else's validation but your own. So
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
That's one thing I do see though, is people will buy like a custom guitar built for them with like a mastery bridge, and like it's made of Babinga, and it's got the tuners, the locking tuners and this, that, and then they go to list it on Facebook Marketplace for $2,700.
We get a lot of that at shows where someone's walking, especially later in the day, where they'll be walking around, they're like, oh, you're not interested in this? It has all these great specs. I spent $3,000 on it. I'm like, that's all awesome. I don't know what the market is for it though, so you're on your own on that one. But
yeah. Well, it's like if it was built for you, then who else is going to buy it?
It's worth what it's worth to you, or if you find somebody else that also sees that.
Right.
And for me as a dealer, I'm not that into it. For me as a player, it could be cool, but I'm not a big like luthier build guy.
Even aside from
I'm
like,
pretty basic.
Even aside from like the luthier build stuff, I think a lot of people don't realize that if you take like a Les Paul standard and you put $400 pickups, and you put like $400, you don't take, when you sell it, you're not going to get the worth of the guitar plus the worth of all the parts. They're probably going to get less.
Oh yeah.
A lot of that shit's going to have to be swapped back out again, right?
Yeah, because it's like, just because that's the parts you want doesn't mean the end buyer wants it.
It's like putting a pool on your house. A lot of people are like, oh, I spent $100,000 adding a pool.
Right.
And my Zestimate only went up 15 grand.
I would say it might add something, because I mean, once you get in Les Paul standard territory, like I think most people just prefer to find them original. But I mean, there's sometimes I'll see import guitars that would have come with cheap pickups that someone will have like invested in Seymour Duncan pickups, and it actually does help the value a little bit. But like a Les Paul standard with Seymour Duncans is not going to go for any more than just an original one. Like if somebody had a Les Paul standard from 2008 and it had Seymour Duncan pickups and locking tuners and all this stuff, that like I'm super into that. I love that. I don't think you'll get much less than you'd get for an original example, but you're certainly not going to get your money back. I always recommend reverting to stock, but also you have to advertise like, hey, I did touch up the solder joints. Don't be that guy.
Yeah. Well, like even my 76 Les Paul, they had a collapsed bridge.
Yeah.
But I kept the bridge and put a new one in. And then when I sold the guitar, I put the original bridge back on and I put then I put the new bridge in the case.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm selling it with the original bridge on it. I have a new bridge as well. And I feel like that. Don't
that
toss
goes
your
such
parts.
a long way.
Do not toss your parts.
No. Oh my God. I had one time recently, someone sold us this vintage SG and they're like, it's got replaced pots, but don't worry. I saved the originals. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I go see it. And the originals were just like it was just like a ball of rust. And I'm like, I can't do I love this is here, but I'm like, there's nothing I can do with this. Whereas in your situation, it was like that bridge was still functional.
Yeah, I put it in a bag and I've left it in the case.
Right.
It's like, yeah. Some of this stuff is out of control.
Yeah.
I like the idea of somebody saying, is this the original solder that was in this guitar?
Yeah.
Well, people will definitely.
I mean, that matters.
Cavity search these things.
Oh, yeah. We upload pictures of the cavities of all of our stuff. You never know. Like, there's nothing wrong with like a guitar having different pickups and you put the original back in. But like, if we're aware of that or if we're the ones putting that original pickup back in, we will definitely note that in the listing because it's not uncommon that we get a Les Paul standard that somebody put a JB in the bridge, but they included the original pickup that came with the guitar in the case. Cool. We're usually going to take that JB for something else, either sell it on its own or wait for a guitar that needs it. And we'll put the original back in, but then we'll make sure to note like, hey, just, all the original parts. When this came in, it had a different pickup. We put the original pickup back in. So a few solder joints have been touched up. Guitar is otherwise original or pure is original, whatever the case is with that one.
That's interesting.
So y'all have listed, I mean, conservatively, at least 50, 60 guitars online, if not more. Similar to before, talking about trying to shop for your own. For anyone who's maybe got like one guitar and they want to sell it, what are some things that you would say you see on Reverb listings right away where you're like, oh, this is never going to sell because this?
Horrendous pictures. Let's get serious here. Take some real pictures of your guitar. Like some of them, it's just like whatever pictures they have. I've seen listings where it's like a picture of them playing it, and I'm like, because
like on stage,
yeah. Like they have the picture. I'm like,
it's like, bro,
that tells me nothing.
Yeah.
Just taking great pictures and like going above and beyond to be transparent, like over promise, under deliver, or other way around, under promise, over deliver, and be as clear and concise with anything. Say everything you know about the guitar. Don't leave anything out. If there's a blemish, make sure that it's pictured and noted.
I hate when it's like, yeah, there is a scratch on the back.
Yeah, but
it doesn't affect playability. And then you look through all the pictures and there's no pictures of the back. It's like,
well, the reality is, if you just say that it has the scratch and picture it, most people will go, I don't care.
I was going to scratch it anyway.
Right. So this is used stuff. It's like, so just be true. Like, it's only going to be a problem when you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Like, we'll get messages of like anything else undisclosed. I'm like, trust me, that I have no incentive in the world to not disclose absolutely everything I know about this. There's no reason for me to
you don't want to get
it
it returned.
Yeah, 100%. That's So.
I always crack up when people link to a video of them playing the specific instrument.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
that's helpful sometimes.
it can be, but then they'll film it on like a GoPro from 2007. Right. I'm like, this made it worse, actually.
Right.
Like,
yeah, the audio quality is
and it's just noisy. Like, if you're going to do a demo video for your piece of gear you're selling, make sure it's not like humming.
Yeah.
Get a good cable.
No,
like,
totally.
Make sure there's not, I don't want to buy that now. So.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
But I guess the bullet point that, just good photos, overstate or over describe it, do everything you can, and then have your shipping materials ready and make sure you pack and ship it professionally. Also, make sure you have your shipping quote worked out. No one wants to sit there waiting for a shipping quote. That's not cool. And also price it with the real price. I hate when people go, I'm going to list my standard for 3,500. That there's no reason for it to be any more than 2,600 or whatever it is. I'm not saying that's the market value for your guitar. I don't know. But
make me an offer.
Yeah, it's just like, let's just be serious here.
Or they'll put the prices like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I see that on Facebook.
It's
more.
like, dude, I'm not making you an offer. Like, you got to go first. This isn't an option.
It's your item, and that's not me like being like, oh, the buyer needs the leverage. It's like, what's the item? Like, what do you want? Just be straight up, because you might be pleasantly surprised that like you might think listing it for 3,500 is going to get you an offer for the 2,800 you wanted. But a lot of times, if you just put it up for the 2,800, in 2 days, someone will go, that's the guitar I want, and the price I want to pay for it, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the ratio is. I know for us, most of our sales are not like negotiated offers. I mean, we're a business, so that's to be expected. But like, I don't know what the ratio is on Reverb, but it's like most people don't want to haggle. Just be straight up about it. Like,
I hate making an offer.
Yeah.
I feel rude.
Yeah.
Even though the button's right there. It's like,
no, totally.
I don't want to insult them. But then it's like, so I ask for like, but then I'm like, but I don't want to screw myself if they go lower. So then I feel like I end up weirdly like not offering anything or lowballing.
Totally. Yeah.
But it's hard to just be like, can I just go like 100 off?
Right.
It's like, what's the point in making an offer if it's $100? I'll just pay it. And then I just don't buy it.
That's why I'm like, just list it for the 100 less, and you'd be surprised if the person that's looking at it might just be like, I'll take it. Cool. Done. And that's what you want.
I bet the guys who are putting up their like guitars for sale or whatever and put up the ridiculous prices, they're probably the same people who will message you and say, what's the lowest price you'll take for this?
Oh, I hate that. I'm like, did you want me to list it for an unrealistic price? Because like, listen, I would never say that we have the cheapest like prices on Reverb or anything. That's not my goal. I try to provide really fair pricing. I try to be, on the lower end if it makes sense to, but I'm trying to provide the best service I can, be super transparent, allow returns. If you don't like it, send it back. It's fine. As long as you cover the shipping, like no stress. That's my goal, is to provide a good experience and price it correctly. I'm not competing for the lowest price because the person with the lowest price may not provide the same like level of service quality that we do. Theirs might not be set up, whatever. So, but it's funny because it's like, no, but this is priced where we think is fair given all the context. And a lot of times I will note that does end up being on the low end. Like I try not to like push the market up. I just try to be like right in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't need to match the person's price that has the crappy photo that the description says
it's missing a string.
Yeah, right. But at the same time, I don't want to be the most expensive either, and I don't want, we want our things to move. We list guitars to sell them, not for people to look at them. But I'm like, did you want me to list it for an unrealistic price so I could give you a second price? Like, it's up for the price you want to sell it for.
Yeah.
Like, if you have an offer, if we just listed it with peace and love, like, we probably can't discount it. But like, if we've had it for 6 months, we have it up for $2,500, and you'd buy it for $2,400. Yeah, we could probably make that happen. Just like, you got to tell us what you want to do.
As a producer doing people's records, I hate it when someone would come tour the studio, talk about how many songs they want to do, and then they go, all right, man, what's the cheapest you can do this for?
Yeah.
It's like just ask the price.
What's the lowest amount you'll take for your time?
Yeah. To me, that's so insulting because it's like, it's not even asking for a deal that's the problem. It's that specific phrase is such a red flag for so many other things.
Well, that's kind of maybe a better way to illustrate the point is if somebody comes in, let's say they came to you to record, that's like, hey, my budget's $2,000. I'm trying to do XYZ. What's possible?
Right.
That's a lot better starting place than like, here's all the stuff we could do. What's your rock bottom or whatever?
Right.
Because like if someone comes to us, it's like, hey, we keep talking about Les Paul Standard. We'll keep it there. Les Paul Standard, my budget is $2,300, not $2,600. Can you make anything work? And it's like, yeah, there might be one that maybe we got a better deal on or something. They go, cool, I can make this one work, whatever. And the same thing for you. It's like when we originally met, I came to the studio and I didn't have a huge budget, but like I didn't have to haggle with you. I was like, hey, I can do some stuff on my own time. Like, I really want you to record the vocal. I want to do the mixing and stuff here. Like, how do we get this done? And it was easy. It was not a negotiation. It was just like, here's the quote. And went,
well, the
all
other
right,
thing
here
too,
we go.
People will say, what's your bottom dollar? And then they'll be like, can you throw in a hard shell case? It's like,
yeah,
dude,
I hate
you already
that.
you started on the back foot when you asked for the bottom dollar. So I'm going to wrap it in Kleenex, actually. Like, no, you can't get a hard shell case too for that. Like, but people get a little too brave on some of these things. And literally, just don't use that exact phrase. What's the lowest you'll go? Say anything else as your first message, and it's going to go so much better.
And
for
I love
any
too,
service,
When
any
you-
product, anything.
What's the most embarrassed I could make you about this price?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the best part is too when people send that, like, what's the lowest you'll take? No matter what, if you, let's say you send a number back, no matter what it is, they're still going to go, all right, it needs to be lower. It's like, okay.
So I did want to talk a little bit about y'all's YouTube channel specifically and about the stuff that you guys make, because I feel like guitar YouTube is it's the Wild West. There's so many different styles of things you can make, and I feel like y'all are pretty unique.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
What are some things that you see in the YouTube world that other people are doing that you like, or what do you like about your guys' stuff? What makes it tick?
Man, that's a big question. Yeah, there's a lot of various styles of content out there in guitar YouTube, some that I love watching and some I'm not as into, but I don't know. I feel like it's just really, it's weird because some of these videos, it's like so nerdy that there's no context of like actually playing the guitar.
Yeah.
I don't mean they don't have a playing demo, but I mean, they're not thinking about this of like just playing the instrument. They're thinking of like, well, this pickup is this and the action's this. And
like they're building a PC.
Right. And it's like that for me is just not what it's about. And that's not why I play. That's not why I collect guitars. That's not why I've ended up in a career where I'm buying and selling guitars. So we just wanted to do something that was and I'm more nerdy about stuff. That's certainly no shade at all to like getting into the weeds because I love that. But we just wanted to do something that was more of like a vibe channel, more of just let's have fun and talk about the things we like. And like we don't at this point have any like corporate sponsorship type things. I mean, mostly because we are our own brand. So we just need to represent our own brand. So like we can be a little looser with our opinions. And like if we don't like something, it's totally cool to say that. Or if like one person at the shop has an opinion on a piece of gear and another has a different. I love when like somebody's like, yeah, I don't like this at all. This is ridiculous. Or someone's like, oh, I do love this thing. And it's like, we own the gear so we can say whatever we want about it.
Yeah,
so I just was so over like these demo videos where it's just like, and I get it. Like this is no shade to anyone. Like I get it. But you know, the company sends you the thing. They might even be paying you to do the thing, you know, to do the review of the thing. So you have to say something nice. It's like, well, we own the product. We can say whatever we want. We just did a video about the Fender Tone Master Deluxe Reverb, which I somewhat praised, you know, certain aspects of it, but like I didn't have to tell you it was great. And in the video was just like, in most situations, I'd just get the tube version. This is a really expensive product for what it is. If you got that sent from Fender, that's probably not the feedback they're looking for.
But even if you were a shop selling new inventory,
you also you
have 300 of them now.
Yeah.
So you can't say, oh, there's something better, but you have one of those.
Yeah.
Someone's going to buy it.
We just want to do something more fun and just have, you know, it's not all about the smallest details in these videos. Like we want to just do like, hey, let's show us traveling to go find these guitars. Let's show the story behind how we found certain things. And like, there's like a video, one of the Japan videos where like I bought this like Les Paul Jr., Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul Jr. for myself, which is rare. Most of the stuff we buy in the channel is for the shop, but in it I show like, oh, this neck is like huge. It's not the specs that I enjoy.
I hate it.
Yeah.
It's like a baseball bat.
But I don't
like
know, there was
big
just
end
something
of
about it. And that was kind of my point of showing that is like, dude, just play stuff. Like you would be pleasantly surprised if you stop listening to the forums and just go play the thing. And you might be like, wow, you know what? On paper, this isn't my thing, but I actually love it now that I'm doing it. And so I don't know. We just want to do something more fun that is just what I would want to see. I think there's a lack of like cool, vibey videos in that genre. It's either like a really rigid review or it's, you know,
hype editing.
Yeah.
I like y'all's stuff because it's like you do a 30-minute video.
Yeah.
Where it's just like we're going to a bunch of guitar shops and playing stuff and talking about how we feel. You don't necessarily have to like be glued to the screen and you're editing it for like someone's gonna relax and put this on and drink a LaCroix and just like learn some stuff about some guitars and enjoy their evening.
That's the goal. And it's funny because like we try to make our channel like as undivisive as possible. Like it's supposed to just be for fun. So whenever we get like negative comments about stuff, it's always interesting because it's like, dude, we're literally just trying to have fun and like this should be a distraction from all the negative things. Like don't bring it into the comment section. Like just talk about the stuff you like. And like there was a video I remember one time we had where our friend Colin was roasting what was it? it was like, I think it was a Roland synth guitar. And he's like, what are we doing here? And
I think he said I should.
He said you should actually be the one playing it. But it was like, and somebody's like, wow, why are you guys trashing your gear? Like, or like, you know, like making fun of it. It's like, dude, because it's supposed to be fun. Like, it's supposed to be lighthearted. Like, this thing was made 40 years ago. Like, I don't think the developer of it's sitting there going, why is he making fun of it? Which, mind you, I'm sitting over there going like, nah, that's pretty cool, actually. So it's like,
right.
We always try to keep a positive vibe, we try to make it a guitar channel that you could be like not a guitar nerd and still enjoy. And we hear that a lot from people, that they're like, oh, this is the one guitar channel that my partner will watch with me, which is like one of the best compliments we could get, because it means like we're taking the thing that we love and making it something that people might enjoy that might not know as much about it and might have otherwise not had any reason to watch it. So it's pretty cool.
As someone who buys and sells a lot of guitars, you would have like a fairly high level of knowledge of, we'll say, Gibson guitars. Are there any things that you hear people say commonly, or any stereotypes about Gibson guitars, or like anything like that every time you hear it, you go, well, that's wrong?
I love Gibson guitars. I'll also happily call out Gibson guitars when they make mistakes, such as most things from 2015. But man, the biggest thing with Gibson that I see is just the Gibson Epiphone debate.
Yeah.
Actually, before I say that, I'll just say there are, like, I've played plenty of Gibsons that have their quality control issues of many years, not just of 2015, which I always note that's the year that there was like the robot tuners and some really weird specs and the super wide necks that didn't make any sense. And but just, I think people love to, well, it's funny because I'm doing it right now, 2015, but people love to write off, well, they played one example of a certain year, and so that means all of them are bad.
Yeah.
Or that theirs is really great, so that means every example is amazing. And every guitar is its own handmade thing, for better or worse.
Yeah. And
they're all going to be different. I have like a TV yellow Les Paul special in my collection from 1995 that I bought. It was the 5th or 6th junior/special that I'd bought, trying to find my like one. And I love that one, but I definitely played some along the way that weren't great. So I wouldn't say every last Gibson is amazing, but we try to only sell the ones that we think are really great. And because we handpick most of the stuff, that's not a challenge. But getting back to the stereotypes, I'm going to give both sides of this take, because people always say like, oh, my Epiphone is just as good as a Gibson that I've played, as a comment. Or they'll say my Epiphone is just as good as your Gibson. And it's just like, if you have an Epiphone that you love, awesome. No one's debating that. Like, enjoy your guitar, play it. I hope it inspires you to make music. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to recommend that I think that's as good as the Gibson counterpart. I do think in almost every situation, the Gibson stuff is better, or at least is different in ways that for me are make or break for guitar. I don't want to buy an Epiphone with this thick poly plastic finish. I want to buy a Gibson with nitro lacquer, even though different years will have thicker or thinner finishes. But just like what you like, and you don't need to listen to what everybody says. I think maybe that's the overarching point, is just like, if you like something, then like it no matter what somebody else says. And it's okay if somebody else has a different opinion. But people, I do just often see saying like, oh, this cheap guitar, whether it's an Epiphone or even like Harley Benton, is just as good as a $5,000 custom shop. And it's like, again, if you like it, great. But no one's gone and bought an R9 and go, I could have bought 50 Harley Bentons instead. So that's not to say if you can't afford the R9 that you're out of luck, but
Well, I think that's one thing, is there's like a line where there's guitars that are unplayable, and then there's guitars that are playable. Yeah. And then there's like a really big area where those are occupying different kind of tiers. But at the end of the day, a Harley Benton is playable. Yeah. If it's not noisy, if the frets aren't cutting up your fingers, like, you have a playable guitar. Yeah. If someone has a playable guitar that they like more, that costs more money, I don't think you can tell them that they're wrong, because you've owned a Harley Benton and then you've played a Les Paul for 20 minutes. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, if you owned a Les Paul first and then you played a Harley Benton for 20 minutes, you might be able to go, no, that's not it. Yeah. But if you've owned a Harley Benton for 3 years and you play Les Paul, you might not appreciate the differences. Yeah.
And the Harley Benton will feel more at home. You're used to it.
Exactly.
Which I think is what a lot of people kind of That's kind of where they come to that conclusion from, which is totally cool. It's like, if you got your thing and you like it,
Right.
what are you doing in the forums? Just go play it.
But I think the playable line, once you get across that, like, yeah, we are being picky.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to admit that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
if you want the premium guitar and you care about the little things, just say that, you know? And if you don't, then be fine with the $230 Harley Benton. Like, no one is going to be, there doesn't need to be a beef between the people who want to pay more for like the higher quality control and whatever else it is. Like, I have a buddy who bought a Harley Benton and immediately was like, oh, the pickup's really noisy.
Yeah.
And I want to get a new pickup for it. And it's like, well, the new pickup he wants is $150.
It's like the price
And
of
it's
the
like, that's the
guitar.
price of the guitar, which is fine. Some people want to tinker.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to tinker. And I think that it's great that there's products for all of the above. If you bought a $400 guitar, it might cost $50 more than a Harley Benton and a pickup, but you also didn't have to learn to solder. You know what I mean? It's like, what is it worth to you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, from like me as a player and collector, whatever, I don't consider myself a collector that much because I use all my stuff. I'm not like hoarding. Yeah.
I mean, you literally have a warehouse full of guitars. So.
Well, I mean,
That's
as
for
far as
sale.
my own like personal
I know,
collection is
think about it.
separate from the shop. Obviously, we do have a warehouse of guitars, but it's like, I like the nice stuff. Like, I wouldn't sell the stuff if I didn't find there to be value in getting the best. Like, that's not to say you can't do great stuff with not the best, but like, I'm like, for a perfect example, like, we sell a lot of Fender Japan. I have at home right now a Fender Japan traditional 60s Tele custom, and it's awesome. I have nothing but love for it. And I may or may not have just brought home a Sherwood Green American Vintage Tele custom that's worth 2 or 3 times as much. They both sound great. They both do the Tele thing.
Yeah.
The Sherwood Green one, more expensive one, is a little better. Not by that much though, but I'm willing. I'll pay that premium because I like it. Like, and that's okay. I like that it's nitro lacquer. I think it looks great. I think it makes a difference to me, but that doesn't mean it needs to for you. So,
Well, I think too, there's a difference between playability and sound, because I think you can control for sound a lot more.
yeah.
Like, let's say you have a guitar that is brighter and one that's darker and one that sounds a little woolly and whatever else it is. Like, you can fix a lot of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You can change your amp settings to make a brighter guitar sound darker and vice versa. But if the actual piece of material you're holding is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
there's no knob for that, you know? So like, people will, I think a lot of times, focus so much on one or the other,
Yeah.
where the people who care so much about playability will be like, you could never be a serious musician and have a Michael Kelly guitar. And it's like, or a Harley Benton or whatever it is. And it's like, no, if I'm listening to someone play guitar, I'm not feeling the fretwork.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling how the finish on the back of the neck is affecting whatever it is. I'm just hearing the notes. And if the notes sound good, I'm not going to be like, oh, that show stunk.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if you care a lot about playability, you're going to care more about the fit and the finish
Yeah.
and whatever else it is. And some people's priorities just are different in that regard.
Yeah, kind of to get back to we were talking about a minute ago with like YouTube content. Like, I think people see the videos where the thing that can come across the most from a YouTube video is the sound difference. And
Right.
you'd be really surprised that with a great setup, that a Squier Classic Vibe Tele is actually not that far off of a custom shop. They're not the same, but they're both Teles.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think people hear that and they go, oh, well, the difference isn't that big. It's like, we were having this conversation off camera. It's like, I don't buy the nice guitar for you. Like, I buy it, or for whoever's listening, not, you want to give your listener the best experience you can, but like, I buy it because that's what inspires me to play, not because it's expensive or whatever. I just love the way that it feels. And there's something that this guitar does that I don't get out of other guitars. And that's why I like it. And that's what's going to make me pick it up and make music with it. And it could be a little bright or a little, bassy or whatever. And that just informs the way I'm going to use it. But I'm not trying to dial everything to sound the same. I'm just going to lean into whatever that thing does well. And that's going to make me play a certain way. And that's all right.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of that Fluff buying the cheapest guitar on Amazon video. I bought it after that video came out because I had Amazon gift card that was the same amount. and he made it sound amazing. He played it through like a dual rec or whatever, you know,
yeah.
and he mixed and mastered this demo song. And I took it out of the box and I grabbed it and I just went, ew.
Right.
Because the back of the neck felt like one of those balsa wood airplanes you would buy at Cracker Barrel.
Right.
And I was just like, oh my goodness. And then my brother was like, I want to start learning guitar. Do you have a guitar I can borrow? I was like, oh, I have this really cheap one I got on Amazon. And then I was like, you know what? No, I feel bad actually.
Yeah.
Let me give you this Parts Jazzmaster thing because at least it has like a nice feeling neck. So it's like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't even let my brother play that guitar because I didn't want to put him off to guitar.
Well,
So it's like, yeah, it sounded fine in the video, but like,
That's-
ew.
I got two
Which,
things
respect
to
to
say
Fluff.
about that.
I mean, that video probably paid for his mortgage for a long time, but
I hope it did.
I watched the video where he said that video changed his life
Really?
because it got so many views, it blew up his channel.
I would ask him this. I would be curious if, because I have seen that video, if he was sitting there like in between like every measure, just having to retune the guitar to keep like the intonation, or like every chord having to like
yeah.
tune, because
Probably.
that's, to me, that's the only way that you could get it to sound like that. Like, you know, when you swap one piece of the equation, usually it's still pretty good.
yeah.
But it's like we've said, it's like we've had this conversation off camera of like, you can make great music with the cheapest stuff as long as it's at a certain passable level of quality. But man, it's a lot more fun to make it with the good stuff. That doesn't mean you need it, but like,
Right.
it's-
Well, it's
you
like
know.
if you bought the cheapest guitar on Amazon, the cheapest amp on Amazon, the cheapest mic on Amazon, the cheapest
wow.
cable on Amazon, you know, if you did the whole shopping cart of that and then you tried to make a recording.
That to
fun.
me is
Have
not
fun.
the level that I would call passable, to clarify. I mean, like,
Right,
let's
but-
say you bought a player telly,
Yeah.
even a classic vibe telly, and a Neural DSP plugin and a Focusrite Scarlett.
You're ripping.
Yeah.
You can make music with that, and a SM7B, and there's not a lot you can't get done there.
100%.
But it's more fun right now, like we're doing it, where we have the vintage amps and 20 guitars and really nice ribbon mics that our friend is letting us borrow, and
yeah.
it's a lot more fun.
It's all just what you want to do.
Yeah.
Well, real quick before we go, I did have a couple little lightning round kind of things we could talk about. So if you don't mind,
Let's do it.
let's see if we can rip through these. How do you feel about tone woods? 15 seconds.
I think it matters. I think it matters a good bit, but there's a lot of other factors. But there's nothing wrong with buying a guitar with the type of woods you want. And all the guitars I own, that is something I am considerate of when making that purchase decision. Your mileage may vary. I won't say I will. Got another thing I want to say.
Go ahead.
I'm not the guy that's going to buy the PRS Wood Library guitar, but if you are and you can afford it and you've worked for that, then go for it. Nothing wrong with it. Buying what you enjoy.
If you have the Wood Library guitars, please hit me up. I'm looking for a new dentist.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll help you out. Thoughts on the Gibson headstock angle? Should they change it?
It's iconic. Functionally, probably, but based on, man, it's just so cool. It's just a look. I would say no, but your mileage may vary. You know what I would love for them to do, which maybe they have done. I don't think they have though. Is if they, because I know they have like the modern style Les Paul. Maybe on the modern one, make it a little less slanted. But the 60s, you know, classic kind of Les Paul standard, let's keep that the way it was. And then maybe provide an option that improves on that later.
Push-pull pickups. For them or against them?
I know one person, shout out to Sergio Medina. He's good people. Who he's got a telly with Seymour Duncan's in it that he has a push-pull. And he uses it in a really cool way. I've otherwise not really seen them using that cool of a way. If he uses it almost as like the opposite of a boost, like, you know, he's doing his humbucker thing and he wants to back up a little bit, he'll pop the single coil type sound. But you never really get the single coil type sound. It's just like a less high output humbucker. So I would use a single coil guitar for that thing and a humbucker guitar for that thing and a P90 guitar for its own thing. I'm not a big fan of push pulls. I don't like a lot of controls. Let's keep it simple, and I like guitars that do one thing really, really well. Guitar
YouTuber, where if their thumbnail comes up, you click it more often than not. Who's your favorite?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of somebody who doesn't publish a lot. So when they do, it's like, oh yes, like I gotta watch this. She's not a guitar YouTuber, but Emily Hopkins,
Harp Lady.
yeah, she makes awesome videos, and like people always say like, are you a guitar person, an amp person, or a pedal person? Which I'd assume she's a pedal person based on her channel. I'm not a pedal person. That's probably my 3 of 3. I'm most into guitars. I like amps too, and pedals are like my least priority, but they have a way of making videos that display pedals being used in really cool ways that I think are cool. So whenever she uploads, we're watching that.
All right. And the final question, were robot tuners ahead of their time? Should we bring them back now that you've been in the studio more?
No.
That's my hottest take.
The concept is not bad, and maybe one day they'll get it right, but I think we can tune on our own.
Look, that's yet to be determined.
Yeah.
Bonus.
Yeah.
Snark on the headstock at a gig.
Absolutely not.
No? We can't be doing that?
No.
All right, fair enough.
Unless you're playing a acoustic guitar that doesn't have a pickup, or you're just
if you're playing at Margaritaville, who
Yeah.
cares, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, there it is, folks.
Oh.
That's the answers to the lightning round. Thanks
Cool.
for going through that with us.
Dude, thank you guys for having us, man.
I
It's
think-
great to talk to you guys. Great to see you guys as always. And,
Yeah.
Right on.
congrats with all the success with KGR. I'm sure it will continue to flourish, and I look forward to continuing to see that.
Same to you.
Too kind.
Sell some
Well,
gear.
thank you. Will do.
Hopefully people learn something. Hopefully people find a cool vintage guitar and they play it.
Yes, that's play your stuff. It doesn't matter what any of us think. If you have something you enjoy, then enjoy it and stop worrying about what the forums say.
And then beyond that, we'll see you next time. Make sure to subscribe, right? Like button.
Leave a comment.
There's probably a Sweetwater link in the bio if you want to buy something.
I like
And,
this. I don't have to do the outro.
We'll see you next time.